We're on day 71 of our Bible in a Year series, reading through the entire Bible in a year. We're reading through specifically the CSB, Christian Standard Bible, and that'll be up on the screen if you want to follow along. If you're watching, if you're listening, obviously that doesn't help. But even if you have a different translation, you can read along, or you can pull up the CSB online for free. A few different resources, Bible.com, Bible Gateway. Yeah, you can probably just Google CSB, online CSB Bible. But you can also just go to YouTube or Rumble and watch these, and it'll be up on the screen like it is right there. So let's jump straight in to Joshua 22. And this will be the last day in Joshua. Tomorrow we'll be starting in Judges. And yeah, some interesting stories in Judges that a lot of people don't really go too much. There's a couple that are popular that people hit, but there's a lot that doesn't get touched in not Joseph, in Judges that is really, really fascinating. So looking forward to jumping in there. Um, but that'll start tomorrow. And today, Joshua 22, verse 1. Joshua summoned the Reubenites, Gadites, and half the tribe of Manasseh and told them, "You have done everything Moses, the Lord's servant, commanded you, and have obeyed me in everything I commanded you. You have not deserted your brothers even once this whole time, but have cried out or carried out the requirements of the command of the Lord your God. Now that he has given your brothers rest, just as he promised them, return to your homes and your own land that Moses, the Lord's servant, gave you across the Jordan. Only carefully obey the command and instruction that Moses, the Lord's servant, gave you. To love the Lord your God, walk in all his ways, keep his commands, be loyal to him, and serve him with all your heart and all your soul." Joshua blessed them and sent them on their way, and they went to their homes. Moses had given territory to half the tribe of Manasseh and Bashan, but Joshua had given territory to the other half with their brothers on the west side of the Jordan. When Joshua sent them to their homes and blessed them, he said, "Return to your homes with great wealth, a huge number of cattle, and silver, gold, bronze, iron, and large quantity of clothing. Share the spoil of your enemies with your brothers." The Reubenites, Gadites, and half the tribe of Manasseh left the Israelites at Shiloh in the land of Canaan to return to their own land of Gilead, which they took possession of according to the Lord's command through Moses. When they came to the region of the Jordan in the land of Canaan, the Reubenites, Gadites, and half the tribe of Manasseh built a large, impressive altar there by the Jordan. The Israelites heard it said, "Look, the Reubenites, Gadites, and half the tribe of Manasseh have built an altar on the frontier of the land of Canaan as the region of Jordan on the Israelite side." When the Israelites heard this, the entire Israelite community assembled at Shiloh to go to war against them. The Israelites sent Phinehas, son of Eleazar, and the priest to the Reubenites, Gadites, and half the tribe of Manasseh. In the land of Gilead, they sent 10 leaders with them, one family leader for each tribe of Israel. All of them were heads of their ancestral families among the clans of Israel. They went to the Reubenites, Gadites, and half the tribe of Manasseh in the land of Gilead and told them, "This is what the Lord's entire community says. What is this treachery you have committed today against the God of Israel, by turning away from the Lord and building an altar for yourselves, so that you are in rebellion against the Lord today? Wasn't the iniquity of Peor, which brought a plague on the Lord's community, enough for us? We have not cleansed ourselves from it even to this day. And now would you turn away from the Lord? If you rebel against the Lord today, tomorrow he will be angry and the entire community of with the entire community of Israel. But if the land you possess is defiled, cross over to the land the Lord possesses, where the Lord's tabernacle stands, and take possession of it among us. But don't rebel against the Lord or against us by building for yourselves an altar other than the altar of the Lord our God." Wasn't Achan, son of Zerah, unfaithful regarding what was set apart for destruction, bringing wrath on the entire community of Israel? He was not the only one who perished because of his iniquity. So it's it doesn't take long. Yeah, it doesn't take long for this stuff to start happening again. I will say it is at least reassuring to see what seems to be a majority of the Israelites are now like turning against what had been done. But yeah. Verse 21. The Reubenites, Gadites, and half the tribe of Manasseh answered the heads of the Israelite clan, the mighty one, God the Lord, the mighty one, God the Lord. He knows, and may Israel also know. Do not spare us today, if it was in rebellion or treachery against the Lord, that we have built for ourselves an altar to turn away from him. May the Lord himself hold us accountable. If we intended to offer burnt offerings and grain offerings on it, or to sacrifice fellowship offerings on it, we actually did this from a specific concern that in the future your descendants might say to our descendants, what relationship do you have with the Lord, the God of Israel? For the Lord has made the Jordan a border between us, and you, descendants of Reuben and Gad, you have no share in the Lord. So your descendants may cause our descendants to stop fearing the Lord. Therefore we said, let's take action and build an altar for ourselves, but not for burnt offerings or sacrifice. Instead, it is to be a witness between us and you, and between the generations after us, so that we may carry out worship of the Lord in His presence with burnt offerings, sacrifices, and fellowship offerings. Then, in the future, your descendants will not be able to say our descendants, you have no share in the Lord. We thought that if they said this to us or our generations in the future, we would reply, look at the replica of the Lord's altar that our ancestors made, not for burnt offering or sacrifice, but as witness between us and you. We would never, ever rebel against the Lord or turn away from him today by building an altar for burnt offering, grain offering, or sacrifice, other than the altar of the Lord our God, which is in front of his tabernacle. So, they've got an explanation. They've got a reason for why that they did this. They said that it's not to actually sacrifice anything like that, but it's more of a reminder for the generations to come to show that they are God's chosen people, along with the rest of the Israelites. Verse 30. When the priest Phinehas and the community leaders, the heads of Israel's clans who were with him, heard what the descendants of Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh had to say, they were pleased. Phinehas, son of Eleazar, the priest, said to the descendants of Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh, today we know that the Lord is among us, because you have not committed this treachery against him. As a result, you have rescued the Israelites from the Lord's power. Then the priest Phinehas, son of Eleazar, and the leaders returned from the Reubenites and Gadites in the land of Gilead to the Israelites in the land of Canaan, and brought back a report to them. The Israelites were pleased with the report, and they blessed God. They spoke no more about going to war against them to ravage the land where the Reubenites and Gadites lived. So the Reubenites and Gadites named it the altar. It is a witness between us that the Lord is God. So conflict resolved. It is interesting to see, though, that there was a quick idea or action to put up this altar by the Reubenites, Gadites, and the half of the tribe of Manasseh as a way to make sure that their descendants stay there with God. Also interesting to see such a quick response from the rest of the tribes of Israel to get rid of the issue that they perceived to be there. Chapter 23. A long time after the Lord had given Israel rest from all the enemies around them, Joshua was old, advanced in age. So Joshua summoned all Israel, including its elders, leaders, judges, and officers, and said to them, I am old. advanced in age, and you have seen for yourselves everything the Lord your God did to all these nations on your account, because it was the Lord your God who was fighting for you. See, I have allotted these remaining nations to you as an inheritance to your tribes, including all the nations I have destroyed from the Jordan westward to the Mediterranean Sea. The Lord your God will force them back on your account and drive them out before you, so that you can take possession of their land as the Lord your God promised you. Be very strong and continue obeying all that is written in the book of the law of Moses, so that you do not turn from it to the right or to the left, so that you do not associate with these nations remaining among you. Do not call on the names of their gods or make an oath to them. Do not serve them or bow in worship to them. Instead, be loyal to the Lord your God as you have been to this day. The Lord has driven out great and powerful nations before you, and no one is able to stand against you to this day. One of you routed 1,000 because the Lord your God was fighting for you, as he promised. So diligently watch yourselves. Love the Lord your God, even if you ever turn away and become loyal to the rest of these nations remaining among you. And if you intermarry or associate with them, and they with you, know for certain that the Lord your God will not continue to drive these nations out before you. They will become a snare and a trap for you, a sharp stick for your sides and thorns for your eyes until you disappear from this good land the Lord your God has given you. This is something that we see frequently. This idea they mix, they start to intermarry, things like that, and then that causes them to fall away. And it's maybe not a direct connection. I do think it can be somewhat direct. It's not exclusively talking about marriage, but I think marriage is one application of not being unequally yoked, right? I'd say even beyond just being unwise, I think it is wrong for a Christian to marry a non-Christian, partially because the Bible kind of says that, but also it's just, if you look at it in a practical sense, like, how does that play out? Knowing what is required in a marriage and what goes into a marriage, especially eventually, like if you have children and things like that, um, there are going to be a lot of conflicts that come up that don't have an easy resolution, and sometimes don't have a resolution, don't have a good resolution, anyways. So that's something that we can see here. As they did this, they would start to fall away from God, because it kind of becomes to a point. It'll end up being, are you going to choose your God or your spouse? And there's a lot of times where it may be a lot easier to choose your spouse because they're right there physically in front of you. And if we're being accurate biblically, we should choose God. Now, our spouse shouldn't do anything to put us in a position where we have to choose. But if we do, we choose God. Every time. Verse 14. I am now going the way of the whole earth, and you know with all your heart and all your soul that none of the good promises the Lord your God made to you has failed. Everything was fulfilled for you. Not one promise has failed. Since every good thing the Lord your God promised you has come about, so he will bring on you every bad thing until he has annihilated you from this good land the Lord your God has given you. If you break the covenant of the Lord your God, which he commanded you to go and serve other gods and bow and worship to them, the Lord's anger will burn against you, and you will quickly disappear from this good land he has given you. It's quite the warning. Joshua 24. Joshua assembled all the tribes of Israel at Shechem and summoned Israel's elders, leaders, judges, and officers, and they presented themselves before God. Joshua said to all the people, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Long ago your ancestors, including Terah, the father of Abraham and Nahor, lived beyond the Euphrates River and worshipped other gods. But I took your father Abraham from the region beyond the Euphrates, led him throughout the land of Canaan, and multiplied his descendants. I gave him Isaac, and to Isaac I gave Jacob and Esau. I gave the hill country of Seir to Esau as a possession. Jacob and his sons, however, went down to Egypt. I sent Moses and Aaron, and I defeated Egypt by what I did within it. And afterwards I brought you out. When I brought your ancestors out of Egypt, and you reached the Red Sea, the Egyptians pursued your ancestors with chariots and horsemen as far as the sea. Your ancestors cried out to the Lord, so he put darkness between you and the Egyptians, and brought the sea over them, engulfing them. Your own eyes saw what I did to Egypt. After that, you lived in the wilderness a long time. Later, I brought you to the land of the Amorites who lived beyond the Jordan. They fought against you, but I handed them over to you. You possessed their land, and I annihilated them before you. Balak, son of Zippor, king of Moab, set out to fight against Israel. He sent for Balaam, son of Beor, to curse you, but I would not listen to Balaam. Instead, he repeatedly blessed you. I rescued you from him. You then crossed the Jordan and came to Jericho. Jericho's citizens, as well as the Amorites, Perizzites, Canaanites, Hittites, Girgashites, Hivites, and Jebusites, fought against you, but I handed them over to you. I sent hornets ahead of you, and they drove out the 2 Amorite kings before you. It was not by your sword or bow. I gave you a land you did not labor for, and cities you did not build, though you live in them. You are eating from vineyards and olive groves you did not plant. Therefore, fear the Lord and worship him in sincerity and truth. Get rid of the gods of your ancestors worshipped beyond the Euphrates River and in Egypt, and worship the Lord. But if it doesn't please you to worship the Lord, choose for yourselves today which will you worship. Gods of your ancestors worship beyond the Euphrates River, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you are living. As for me and my family, we will worship the Lord. The people replied, we will certainly not abandon the Lord to worship other gods. For the Lord our God brought us and our ancestors out of the land of Egypt, out of the place of slavery, and performed these great signs before our eyes. He also protected us all along the way we went, and among all the peoples whose land we traveled through. The Lord drove out before us all the peoples, including the Amorites who lived in the land. We too will worship the Lord because he is our God. But Joshua told the people, you will not be able to worship the Lord because he is a holy God. He is a jealous God. He will not forgive your transgressions and sins. If you abandon the Lord and worship foreign gods, he will turn against you, harm you, and completely destroy you after he has been good to you. No, the people answered Joshua, we will worship the Lord. Joshua then told the people, you are witnesses against yourselves that you yourselves have chosen to worship the Lord. We are witnesses, they said. Then get rid of the foreign gods that are among you and turn your hearts to the Lord, the God of Israel. So the people said to Joshua, we will worship the Lord our God and obey him. On that day, Joshua made a covenant for the people of Shechem and established a statute and ordinance for them. Joshua recorded these things in the book of the law. He also took a large stone and set it up there under the oak at the sanctuary of the Lord. And Joshua said to all the people, you see this stone? It will be a witness against us, for it has heard all the words of the Lord said to us, and it will be a witness against you, so that you will not deny your God. Then Joshua sent the people away, each to his own inheritance. After these things, the Lord's servant Joshua, son of Nun, died at the age of 110. They buried him in his allotted territory at Timnath-Serah in the hill country of Ephraim, north of Mount Gosh. Israel worshipped the Lord throughout Joshua's lifetime and during the lifetimes of the elders who outlived Joshua and who had experienced all the works of the Lord had done for Israel. Joseph's bones, which the Israelites had brought up from Egypt, were buried at Shechem in the parcel of land Jacob had purchased from the sons of Hamor, Shechem's father, for 100 pieces of silver. It was an inheritance for Joseph's descendants. And Eleazar, son of Aaron, died, and they buried him at Gibeah, which had been given to his son Phinehas in the hill country of Ephraim. Okay. that is it for Joshua. Finished that up today. Tomorrow we'll be on to Judges, but first we got some questions to answer. Question 1. The misunderstanding about the altar in Joshua 22 nearly leads to a war. What does this teach us about communication and assumptions in our own relationships? I think looking at that, I think it probably would have been a good idea for the who was it? The Reubenites, Gadites, and half of Manasseh, I believe. I think it would have been beneficial or better for them to, sure, build the altar to be a reminder, but maybe let everybody else know, especially since Israel has a habit of abandoning God like every 7 seconds. That would maybe have been a beneficial thing. I think it's good that the other tribes found out before they just rushed in and killed everybody. Definitely a good thing. So, it's not, you don't want to assume things about people, but if it's serious things, then I don't think you should beat around the bush about it either. I think you should be direct and especially if it's a sin issue, straight out. You don't kind of spend a lot of time tiptoeing around the issue. I kind of heard this. I think that so I've done some counseling with people, and I've been accountability partner for people with addiction before, and that is something where there is no tiptoeing around it. There's no beating around the bush. It is direct and pointed, and sometimes even accusatory in your question asking, and sometimes that's needed. So there can be a time and a place for both, but especially if there's a sin issue, it just needs brought up, pointed out. Question 2. Joshua's famous call to choose this day who you will serve in chapter 24 is a defining moment. How can we make that choice real in our daily lives? Well, I think it kind of ties into what Paul talks about in Galatians, that you die daily, right? This is a daily decision that you make. Every day you have to choose who you're going to serve. Sometimes multiple times a day. I'd say every time you make a decision on, if you have something that you are frequently dealing with, whether it's a sin issue or a difficult coworker, boss, something like that, you're making a decision on who you're going to serve. Are you going to give in to your desires or your fear or your anger? Are you going to serve that thing? Or are you going to serve God? So that's something that we can take every day. It also was very, very reminiscent of what Moses did at the end of Deuteronomy, kind of recapping and bringing it to this final decision point for Israel. So, question 3. As Joshua recounts Israel's history and dies, he leaves a legacy of faith. What kind of spiritual legacy do you hope to leave for those who come after you? Similar. Faith. I want to... so, this question is kind of tricky because I don't like the idea of leaving a legacy necessarily. I like the quote... I don't remember who it goes to, but the quote is this: preach the gospel, die, be forgotten. That should be our goal. To preach the gospel. Don't do something. I'm not trying to do this to build up Jesse, right? I'm not trying to do this to build up myself. I'm trying to do this to elevate myself or to gain a following or anything like that. I want to preach the gospel. I want to help people go further in their relationship and go deeper in their relationship with God. And the second I get away from that as the driving force is the second that I should step away and completely stop. This isn't about me. This isn't about anything that I want or anything I want to do or anything like that. This is completely about God, how I can serve Him, and things I can do for Him. That's it. On that note, if that's the last question. If you're still watching, appreciate it. Like, subscribe, comment, all that. I enjoy hearing comments from people. Comments on videos, messages, whatever. I try to respond as much as I possibly can. But yeah, it's Joshua's been a good one. We're on to Judges. If this has been a blessing to you, share it with other people. Word of mouth is the best way that podcasts spread. So share it with them. It can be a blessing to them. And maybe this can help them to stick with a daily Bible reading challenge that they may be going through. And that's kind of what the purpose of this is. And now we're done with Joshua. We're on to Judges. That'll be tomorrow. So come back tomorrow and we will start in the book of Judges with some really, really interesting stories. Like I said, these are going to be ones in Judges. There's a lot of very interesting stories that a lot of people just skip over. They're not familiar with. So if you've not read Judges before, I can pretty much guarantee you there are going to be things that we read that surprise you or shock you, or you're going to be floored. So come back tomorrow. We'll start that. God bless.